G'day boys and girls, welcome back. In this video we're going to start building the block system for our 2D Terraria style building mechanic. It's going to be very straightforward and we can achieve all of it with one script. Nothing too exciting is going to happen by the end of this video, sorry. That will hopefully come in one of the next videos where we start building the actual building mechanic and the player controls. But for this one we just need to lay a little bit of foundation just so that the rest of the process is a bit easier for us. Like I said, we're only going to need one script, so I'm going to create a C# script in the scripts folder I have here. What will we call it? We'll call it BlockSystem. Sounds good. BlockSystem, there we go. Visual Studio doing its thing. It's going to wipe that out because we'll start from scratch because I like doing that. There we go, BlockSystem. Alright, so we're going to need a few things. We're going to need a couple of arrays, and these might get a little fiddly as your game gets on a bit, but hopefully it should be easy to manage. We're going to add a few comments as well, just so we can keep track of what we're doing. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to break our blocks up into solid and, what will I call them? I'll call them like background blocks, I guess, or backing blocks. If you're familiar with Terraria as an example, you have the difference between a wood block and a wood wall. One is solid, the other is not. The player can pass through one of them and it's drawn behind the player. So a lot of that will be taken care of in your prefabs, but we also want to be able to break these blocks up just so we know which is which when we're creating them, because we're going to use our own custom class to do this, and we'll get into that in a second. So for now, let's just create a couple of arrays. So the first one's going to be for our solid block, so I'll just add a comment in for this. So arrays for all solid blocks. That'll do. The two arrays need to match up, and this is going to be important because we're creating two arrays now. First one's going to hold our sprites, so we'll do a serialized field. We will do a serialized field, thank you, to hold our sprites. This is going to be an array, as evidenced by the two square brackets. We'll call it solid blocks. Going to create another one, serialized field, private. This is going to be a string array. What will we call it? We'll call it solid names. This is going to be the names of all the blocks. So the idea here is going to be solid blocks. This array is going to contain the sprites. So for example, it'll be our dirt and our stone and our grass sprites. And the ID of the solid names array. So if element 0 of solid blocks is the, let's say, stone block, then element 0 of the solid names array needs to be a string like stone or stone block or whatever you want. You'll see that as we go. And we're going to create two more arrays. This is going to be the background blocks, the back blocks, I don't know what I'll call them. So arrays to store, call them backing blocks. There we go. There we go. As before, ensure these match up. 2 exclamation marks because I'm serious. It's important. Well, it's not. It won't break anything, but it'll look weird. Private sprite, we're doing the same thing again. So we're doing another sprite array. We're going to call this one backing blocks. And again, serialized field. Why do I do that? Serialized field, private string array, backing names. Okay, and we're going to need one more array. And this array is going to be the array to store all blocks created in awake, which is when we're going to basically take all of the materials that you feed the game and turn them into a bunch of blocks that you can use. Not physical, you'll see. We're going to create this, we're going to make it public. I don't know if I need to expose that, if that needs to be hidden from the editor or not. I can't remember if it will. And we haven't created a class for this yet, so ignore that. We just need to get rid of that. Thanks, Visual Studio. Public block all blocks. Like I said, we're going to be creating our own class. So we might do that now, actually, just so we don't have these horrible red squiggly lines all over the place. We're going to do this after the block system class here, after this last closing bracket. We're going to create a public class called block. Curly brackets, there we go. And we'll need a few variables, so we'll say a private int, which we will call block ID. It's going to be a number to identify the block easily. We'll need a string. This is going to be the name of the block, so we'll call it block name, easy peasy. We're going to need another one, a private sprite. This is going to be the block sprite, so we'll call it block sprite. What else do we need? We need a bool. We'll say private bool is the block solid. So, whoop, is solid. There we go. Alright, cool. I think that's all we'll need for now. We'll see how we go. We can always add to this, and that's the beauty of it. So like I said, you should be able to drag and drop a lot of this, but through some very easy scripting and customization, you can expand this massively. That's what's good about it. Yay. We'll need a constructor, so let's create that now. We'll say public block, and this is what's going to get called whenever we create a new block object. Let's say int ID, so we're going to need to pass this a number for its ID, and we'll do the same for the rest of the variables. String my name. What's next? Sprite, it needs to be a sprite. My sprite, sounds right. Oh, there we go, my sprite. And bool, am I solid? Cool, and we've got the curly brackets there. Cool, so this is going to be pretty easy. We're just going to say block ID is equal to ID. Block name is equal to my name. And what is it? Block sprite, where is it there? Is equal to my sprite. And finally, is solid is equal to am I solid. Cool. So if you're not too familiar with what's going on there, it's pretty straightforward. We're going to create our own custom object, and it's not really a physical object. You're not going to really see a represent. Well, you will when you spawn it. You'll see. But it's just our own object here, our own class. We're calling it block because that seems pretty straightforward. We've got a bunch of data within that class, and that data is the identifying data for that for each block that we create. But it's private, so we can't sort of, well, we can access it directly sort of thing through a bit of trickery, but we don't need to here. The important thing is we just have those variables ready to accept some data so that we can create our own, you know, in quotation marks, block. And the constructor down here, the public block, as well as these parameters, as well as these parameters in the brackets, is the data we're going to give each block that we create. So the idea is going to be we're going to create a block, give it the data from the arrays that we've created, and then we're going to store it in the final array, the all blocks array, and we're going to do that with a couple of for loops. So we'll do that now. We'll do it in the awake function, because that's all we need for that class, I think. So we'll say void awake, blah, oops, made it a private void. What's going on there? Visual Studio's gone funny on me lately. You know what, doesn't matter, I'm just going to leave it as it is. Alright, so the first thing we need to do is actually, what are we doing? We need to initialize the all blocks array, make sure it's ready to go. So we'll, I think I spelled that right, all blocks array, there we go. Excuse me. Alright, all blocks is going to equal a new, what is it? It's a new block array, so you can see now it's recognizing that object, it knows what it is. So new block array, and that array, its size is going to be equal to the solid blocks dot length. Is it solid blocks dot length? Yes, plus the backing blocks dot length. So ideally, this array will be composed of only the objects out of these two arrays, the solid blocks and the backing blocks array. So we're creating its size to be equal to the length of both of those. That's all we need to do for that array for now. We're going to create a temporary int, and this is going to store the, what's it going to store? It's going to store the block ID as we go through the for loops. So we'll just say, what, int new block ID equals 0, because we want to start with 0 because we're going to be working with arrays. Okay, so we'll do our first for loop. For int I is going to equal 0, I is less than, not m, what? So, solid blocks dot length. So we're going to iterate through that array, starting at 0 until we hit the end. We're not going to do equals to the length, because if we do that, we'll get a null reference exception, because the array won't have anything in that number. Length, and we'll just do I++, just because we don't need to worry about holding that back, so we'll just increment I each time. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is, what are we doing? I think all we need to do is create our block. That should be easy. So we'll say all blocks, all blocks, new block ID, not I, because we need to carry the next for loop on from this, so we're going to use new block ID. Is going to equal a new block. Here we go. We're creating the object, so this is actually, whoops, we need proper brackets for that. So this is where we're using that constructor, so we need to give it those parameters. So we're going to give it the new block ID. Currently that's 0. We need to give it a name, so the name is going to be equal to solid names I. So this is where the arrays need to start matching up. And we now need to give it the sprite, so solid blocks I. So there you go. If you put a stone sprite in element 0 of the solid blocks array, you need the element 0 of the solid names array to match that. So it should read, you know, stone or stone block or whatever, like I was saying before. And this is why, because this is how we're deciding what blocks we're creating. And as these are solid blocks, we need to give it one more parameter, and that is a boolean of true, because the block is solid. As we can see there, am I solid? Well, yep, we're using the solid blocks. Makes sense, I hope. So we might throw a debug log in there as well, just so we have something to show for our efforts, even if it's not much. Oops. Solid block. What will it be? We'll check the position in the array. I think that'll matter. What am I trying to do here? Sorry. There we go. Plus new block ID plus, then we close the square bracket because I want that to actually be in the string, so we can actually see which block in the array we've just created. And it's going to equal plus solid names I. There we go. So sorry, that's a little bit confusing, and I apologize. Just sort of write it as it is there. So what it's going to print is it's basically going to say solid block, and then it's going to say all blocks. Give us the element of the array. It's going to give us the block ID, so we know where in the array it sits. And this is actually part of the string. It's just so we can see what block we've actually created, and that'll give us the name. There we go. Cool. And we also want to increment the new block ID by 1, just so it keeps going. We're going to do the same for the next array. Oops, for int I equals 0. I is less than, what is it, backing blocks dot length. Same again, I plus plus. Alright, all blocks. Here we go, new block ID. So we're using that ID, that's carried on. So that hasn't gone back to 0, that should still be, what is it, if that array is 2, that ID will currently be 1, I want to say. 0, 1. No, it will be 2 because it'll should have incremented after that. Should be 2. I don't know, whatever. Just gonna dig a bigger hole. I'll shut up now. So new block, same again. So we're just creating a new block, and once again we're gonna use that new block ID, and we're gonna use the backing names for its name this time, using I again to decide which one, and backing blocks to get the sprite. And it's not solid, so false. And the solid's not going to matter at the moment. It will when we come to the building process, so just it's important that we have that data. If you're wondering how we're using it, we're not using it just yet, don't stress. You know, I'm just going to copy and paste this, otherwise that's going to get annoying. There we go. Just change this. Backing block, new block ID, backing names. There we go. And also, once again, we want to increment the new block ID. That's it. That should be the block system, at least for now. We've written most of that. I'll just add in a comment here. So what will this be? For loops to create main all blocks array, not create, populate. There we go. So we're basically filling the all blocks array from the contents of these two, of the solid blocks and backing blocks arrays, using the data that you put into them. So we'll set that up now. And there's the class. Okay. We'll want some sort of a game manager object, I reckon. However you do this is sort of up to you. I'm going to use this for now. Play a game manager. I'm just going to place that block system. There it is. On that, we can see we've got the 4 arrays here. You'll probably have to expand them. We're going to have 3 solid blocks for my example. We'll just make each of those, and for the backing blocks, I'm just going to have 1. We'll just have the wooden wall, just to sort of show that you can have different amounts in each array, and it's not really going to matter. You probably saw that from the script, but you know, good to see that in action, I reckon. All right, into the solid blocks, I'm going to put the dirt. I'm going to put the grass. And I'll put the stone. And into solid names, we need to match that up. So we'll say dirt, block, grass, block, and stone block. Oh, block, there we go. Okay, and do the same for the backing. So the wood wall. Oop. And what will we call it? Wood wall. Oop. Excuse me. Alright. That should be that system. So now if we create it, we should get a list of those 4 blocks in the console down here. Just clear that out, whatever. Assuming I haven't done something wrong. Let's have a look. And there we go. So we can see that all blocks 0 is the dirt block, all blocks 1 is grass, stone, wood, etc. So now if you want to reference those blocks, if you want to find a certain block or bring up the sprite or the name, or if it's solid or whatever, which we'll be doing in the next video, because this one's coming to a close, because that is literally all there is to it. But you can see there that you can easily just reference that array, and you can even sort of iterate through it. And now that we've stored data such as the ID and the name and the sprite, and if it's solid or not, we can easily start getting data back from the blocks when they're in the world, as well as the objects that are within the array itself. So stick around, guys. Please like and subscribe as always, and I'll see you for the next video, which should hopefully be coming out shortly.